Bold and the Beautiful. Recasts that fans hated. Total disasters that ruined icons. Bold and the Beautiful gave some controversial recasts on B&B that caused a huge ruckus. We're going to talk about 5 recasts in particular that fans didn't like and why they didn't like them. Hope Logan recast on Bold and the Beautiful. The controversy of replacing Kim Matula. The very first recast that caused an uproar that I want to talk about was Annika Noel replacing Kim Matula as Hope Logan. If you don't remember, in 2014, Kim Matula left B&B, deciding not to renew her contract. She chose to leave. She left the role of Hope to pursue primetime work and movies. And then 4 years later, they recast with Annika Noel. But for a lot of fans, they felt like they would only accept Kim Matula as Hope Logan. So, there was this initial pushback and some snark on soap social media. You guys know how contentious that can get sometimes. Some people don't play nice, and they attack the actors over stuff that happens with the characters, stuff that happens with the writers. So, there was a whole big faction of fans that didn't want to recast, and they wanted Kim Matula back as Hope. And it came down to the simple fact that Kim was a fan favorite, and her adoring fans were very vocal about their dissatisfaction, and some of them said some pretty mean things about her recast. That's what caused the controversy. Now, 7 years later, Annika Noel has herself earned a passionate and loyal following as Hope. Fans love Annika, but even to this day, some would still like Kim Matula back, even in another role. I doubt that the ex-Hope actress will ever be back, though, because Kim Matula stays busy in primetime and she gets movie roles and she is just killing it out there, and I don't think she would backtrack to Bold. Taylor Hayes recast drama on B&B, from Hunter Tylo to Krista Allen and beyond. The number 2 recast I want to talk about that's so controversial was Taylor Hayes. Both recasts earned a lot of controversy. We know fans absolutely loved Hunter Tylo in the role. She was beautiful. She was a fan favorite with a passionate base of followers. But Hunter Tylo decided not to renew her contract back in 2013 for multiple reasons. She said in interviews that she was frustrated over B&B letting Ron Moss and Stephanie Forrester, Susan Flannery, go. That had her kind of down on staying at the show. Hunter also said she was tired of the repetitive writing and negative storylines like the stuff with lady-on-lady violence and slapping and screaming. She also did not like fan divisiveness, and she didn't like the fact that personal attacks were aimed at her as a human being when people didn't like the character she was playing and her interactions with Brooke Logan, Catherine Kelly Lang. You know, we all need to be respectful online. Bold recasts Taylor Hayes. First, Bold and the Beautiful recast with Krista Allen, who also at first faced a lot of resistance as a recast, but over time she earned acceptance, and I think a lot of fans came to really appreciate her as Taylor. I thought she was great. And then out of nowhere, Bold and the Beautiful fired Krista Allen. She was 2 years into a 3-year contract, and Bold and the Beautiful told her in October 2023 that they weren't keeping her. When there was all this speculation that she had been fired as Taylor, what was crazy to me was the soap came out and said, "No, she's still on contract." Well, that's splitting hairs because they said that, if I recall, in October, and technically that year of her contract ended in December. So, yes, technically she was still on contract, but at that point, according to the actress, they had already released her. So that wasn't really kosher communication as far as I can see it. You can interpret it how you want. Krista spills the tea. A couple of months later, Krista said in an interview that Bold and the Beautiful told her that Taylor wasn't really needed. And Krista said she felt like that was kind of crazy and didn't make sense. She only spoke out about it publicly after a ton of fans reached out to her on social media. Meanwhile, an insider from B&B then insisted they offered Krista to stay on a recurring basis, not a contract basis. But then Krista's rep clapped back and said she got an insultingly low offer of 3 lines in one episode and then months of nothing at all. Her last appearance as Taylor was November of 2023. 9 months later, suddenly Bold decided they did need Taylor, and they recast with Rebecca Budig, who looks so young. She's, I think, 52, but she looks like half that age. A lot of people have said on soap social media, she looks more like Ridge Forrester's Torsten K. tiny daughter. You know, it was disconcerting for a lot of fans. I adore Rebecca Budig. She was great on General Hospital. She was fantastic as Greenlee on All My Children. And I think now fans are finally used to seeing her as Taylor, and they enjoy her vibe with Deacon Sharp, Sean Cannon. But many fans will always want Hunter Tylo back. But she left acting to focus on faith and family and her art. Ridge Forrester's new face, why Ron Moss left and Torsten K. stepped in on Bold and the Beautiful. The third controversial recast to talk about is Torsten K., who replaced Ron Moss as Ridge Forrester, Torsten K. So Ron Moss decided not to renew his contract, and he revealed a while later that a big part of that decision was he and his wife were in this terrible car accident, like near-death car accident, and he had a head injury and it affected his memory and his ability to retain dialogue. So he was struggling to play Ridge because he just couldn't memorize his lines. There were also some pay cuts that Ron said came through that made him feel taken for granted. Not just him. A lot of the actors, he said, were hit with them despite the show having this big success. And Ron in the end said he wanted to pursue music and other projects. But fans were devastated. He left in September 2012. And by December of 2013, Torsten K. had debuted in the role. He'd been on One Life to Live and All My Children. He's a good actor, let's be real. But the BNB fandom is passionate about their favorites and they reject recasts. That's just a fact. And even now, many people still want Ron Moss back. Torsten, for his part, said he doesn't see himself as a romantic leading man and thinks he's a lot less sexy than Ron. Very funny. You know, I think the larger issue with the Ridge swap for me is a writing change that has made the character much less likable than he once was. So for me, it wasn't about the actors, but the writing change for the character. The shocking Thorne Forrester recast. Windsor Harmon's abrupt B&B firing. The fourth controversial recast I want to talk about was Ingo Rademacher replacing Windsor Harmon as Thorne Forrester. And of course, Windsor was another fan favorite that Bold and the Beautiful abruptly fired after 21 years on the show. His last regular episode as Thorne was October 2016, and he thought that he was still on recurring and was waiting on a call to come back and do more episodes. In September 2017, he said he got another type of call from Brad Bell, who had abruptly decided to recast with Ingo Rademacher, who had been over at General Hospital. And Windsor said that Brad Bell's move shocked him. For his part, Ingo said he had no idea that Windsor was still on recurring, and he said he wasn't hired to play another role for 10 to 12 episodes. But then, reportedly, Brad Bell pivoted and decided to recast Ingo as Thorne instead. Ingo said he hoped fans wouldn't hold it against him and said Windsor was one of the nicest people he knows. Ingo's recast was short-lived. After a year playing Thorne, he decided not to renew his contract and went back over to GH. Then in 2023, Bold had Windsor back, I think like for 1 or 2 episodes when Eric Forrester, John McCook, was supposedly dying and we haven't seen him as Thorne since. Thomas Forrester's transformation on Bold and the Beautiful, a recast and a character rewrite. The fifth and last recast I want to talk about that shook up fans was Matthew Atkinson taking over for Pearson Fode as Thomas Forrester. Matthew Atkinson. Pearson was gorgeous, very popular with B&B fans, but they also really hated the storyline where Thomas slept with Caroline while she was drugged. Now, to be clear, Thomas didn't drug Caroline, and he didn't know she had taken an anxiety pill before he showed up at her door. Then, when Bold recast with Matthew Atkinson, also quite the hunk, they started writing Thomas as obsessed with Hope. That was a straight-up, just rewrite, retcon of history. Thomas had only spent time with Hope now and then to distract her so that Steffi Forrester, Jacqueline McInnes, could go chasing Liam Spencer, Scott Clifton. So basically, Brad Bell recast and then abruptly changed Thomas into this psycho stalker fixated on Hope. So again, it's the rewrite of the character more so than the swap of the actors. I think that was the issue. Matthew Atkinson is super talented. He's handsome, but he's been pushed into these awful storylines where Thomas does terrible things. 100% not on the actor. I feel like in this case, like with the Ridge recast to some extent, it's about Brad Bell, head writer, and making major character changes to make them much less likable. Today brings a wave of nostalgia and frustration for the bold and the beautiful fandom as we look back at some of the most heart-wrenching and controversial casting changes in the show's nearly 40-year history. For soap fans, a character isn't just a name in a script. They are a presence that grows with us over decades. When a beloved face is suddenly replaced, it can feel like a very sad betrayal of the show's legacy. From the legendary Core 4 to the next generation of Forresters and Logans, some recasts didn't just fail to live up to their predecessors. They felt like total disasters that fundamentally ruined the icons we loved. 1. Torsten Kaye as Ridge Forrester, the dressmaker, identity crisis. Perhaps the most polarizing recast in daytime history remains the 2013 debut of Torsten Kaye as Ridge Forrester. For 25 years, Ron Moss was Ridge. With his chiseled jawline, soft-spoken delivery, and undeniable playboy swagger, Moss embodied the glamorous, arrogant, yet romantic heart of the show. When Moss departed following a contract dispute and a personal desire to move on, the show waited a year before introducing Kaye. While Torsten Kaye is a powerhouse actor with a rugged, gritty charm, honed on All My Children, he was the polar opposite of Moss. The disaster. Fans felt the glamour of Ridge evaporated. Kaye brought a world-weary, gravelly-voiced intensity to the role that made Ridge feel like a different person entirely. The impact, the bridge, Brooke and Ridge chemistry, which was the show's foundation, shifted from star-crossed lovers to bickering roommates for many viewers. Even a decade later, some diehard fans still refer to him as fake Ridge, unable to reconcile the two vastly different portrayals. 2. Ingo Rademacher as Thorne Forrester, the sudden erasure of a favorite. If you want to see a fandom go into full-scale revolt, look no further than the 2017 firing of Windsor Harmon. Harmon had played Thorne Forrester for 21 years, bringing a gentle, underdog quality to the other Forrester brother that made fans fiercely protective of him. Without warning, showrunner Brad Bell cast General Hospital veteran Ingo Rademacher in the role. The disaster. Harmon revealed he was shocked by the recast, having been told a storyline was coming for him. Rademacher, while a soap legend in his own right, lacked the history and the specific Forrester vulnerability that Harmon perfected. The impact. The recast felt corporate and cold. Rademacher's Thorne was more aggressive and lacked the deep-rooted brotherly chemistry with Ridge. The experiment lasted less than 2 years, and Thorne was eventually written off, leaving the character in a state of limbo that still saddens viewers who miss the Harmon era. 3. Rebecca Budig as Taylor Hayes, the age gap controversy. The role of Taylor Hayes has always been a lightning rod for controversy. While Hunter Tylo is the undisputed queen of the role, Krista Allen did a remarkable job of winning over fans during her 2021 to 2023 tenure, bringing a fresh, zen energy to the world-renowned psychiatrist. However, the recent 2024 to 2025 transition to Rebecca Budig has sparked a firestorm of very sad news headlines. The disaster. Budig is an incredible actress, but the math wasn't matching for the audience. Fans pointed out that Budig looked far too young to be the mother of adult characters like Steffi and Thomas. The impact. Putting Budig's Taylor in scenes with Catherine, Kelly Lang's Brooke Logan, felt jarring. Instead of feeling like two legendary rivals with 30 years of history, it felt like a veteran icon facing off against a newcomer. The historical weight of the character, the years of tragedy, the marriages, the children, seemed to vanish behind the recast's youthful energy. 4. Annika Noel as Hope Logan, the stalker storyline shift. When Kim Matula left the role of Hope Logan in 2014, she left behind a character defined by a specific kind of purity and moral conflict. When Annika Noel took over in 2018, the character's trajectory took a sharp, dark turn. The disaster. This wasn't necessarily an indictment of Noel's acting. She has won an Emmy for her work. But rather how the recast was used to fundamentally change the character's icon status. The shift toward the Thope, Thomas, and Hope pairing, involving years of obsession and manipulation, felt like a betrayal to fans of the original Hope for the future. The impact. For many, the original Hope died with Matula's exit. The new version became a lightning rod for hate-watching, with fans mourning the loss of the sweet, idealistic girl she once was. 5. Emily Harrison as Bridget Forrester, the forgettable blip. While Jennifer Finnegan and Ashley Jones made Bridget Forrester a household name, the 2004 recast with Emily Harrison is often cited as a total disaster in terms of fit. The disaster. Harrison's portrayal was described by fans as immature and giddy, lacking the medical gravitas and emotional depth that Finnegan had established. The impact. The chemistry with the rest of the Forrester clan was non-existent. The show realized the mistake quickly, and Jones was brought in shortly after to save the character. But the Harrison weeks remain a cringe-worthy footnote in B&B history. Why these recasts hurt so much. Soap operas are built on consistency. When a producer decides to refresh a character by replacing the actor, they're gambling with the audience's emotional investment. Today's look back serves as a reminder that sometimes it's better to let a character go off-screen than to force a replacement that shatters the icon's legacy. For more than 3 decades, The Bold and the Beautiful has lived and breathed on the power of its characters. These aren't just roles, they're legacies. Fans don't simply watch Brooke, Ridge, Taylor, or Thorne, they grow up with them, defend them, argue about them, and sometimes grieve them. So when a beloved character is suddenly played by a new face, the stakes couldn't be higher. And sometimes, the gamble fails. Today, we're looking back at some of the most controversial, painful, and flat-out rejected recasts in B&B history. Changes that sparked outrage, broke emotional continuity, and in some cases, permanently damaged iconic characters. For longtime viewers, these recasts weren't just disappointing. They were devastating. Recasting an icon is playing with fire. Soap fans are famously loyal and famously unforgiving. When a recast works, it can feel like magic. But when it doesn't, the backlash is swift, loud, and relentless. The Bold and the Beautiful has learned this lesson the hard way more than once. Some recasts failed because the actor didn't fit the role. Some failed because the writing changed the character beyond recognition. And some failed because fans simply refused to let go of the original. Let's dive into the recasts that fans still talk about, and not fondly. Taylor Hayes, the recast that never stopped hurting. Few characters in B&B history are as emotionally loaded as Taylor Hayes. For years, Taylor was the heart of the show, compassionate, strong, and deeply human. And for many fans, Taylor was Hunter Tylo. When Taylor was recast in the past, fans struggled. But the more recent attempts to reintroduce Taylor with new faces reopened old wounds. While some viewers tried to stay open-minded, many felt the recast stripped Taylor of her warmth and emotional depth. Instead of the grounded psychologist audiences loved, she often felt like a plot device, rewritten to serve triangles rather than embody strength. For fans who spent decades invested in Taylor's soul, these recasts didn't feel like Taylor at all. They felt like imposters wearing her name. Fan reaction. This isn't Taylor. It's a rewrite pretending to be her. Ridge Forrester. A shock fans never fully accepted. When Ron Moss left the role of Ridge Forrester, it sent shockwaves through the soap world. For many viewers, Ron was Ridge. His voice, his swagger, his presence, all irreplaceable. Enter Torsten K. Now, here's where things get complicated. Torsten K is a respected actor, and over time, many fans have grown to appreciate his work. But the initial reaction? Brutal. Fans weren't just seeing a new Ridge, they were seeing an entirely different man. The energy changed. The romantic dynamic with Brooke felt altered. The emotional history suddenly felt disconnected. For some viewers, Ridge never truly recovered as a character. The recast didn't ruin the show, but it permanently split the fan base. Fan reaction: good actor, wrong Ridge. Thorne Forrester, recast into irrelevance. Poor Thorne Forrester. Once a powerful, passionate rival to Ridge, Thorne suffered from repeated recasts that slowly erased his importance. Over the years, Thorne was played by multiple actors, each bringing a different interpretation. Instead of strengthening the character, the constant changes made Thorne feel inconsistent and disposable. Fans never had time to reconnect before another face appeared. Emotional arcs were abandoned. Storylines fizzled. Eventually, Thorne went from central player to afterthought. The recasts didn't just hurt Thorne, they killed his momentum. Fan reaction: they didn't recast Thorne, they erased him. Rick Forrester, a character fans turned against. Rick Forrester has always been complicated, but recasting him pushed viewers from conflicted to outright hostile. When Rick transitioned from one actor to another, fans noticed a dramatic tonal shift. The character became darker, more aggressive, and at times unrecognizable. While some of that came from writing, the recast amplified the problem. Instead of feeling like Brooks' wounded son, Rick started feeling like a villain without emotional grounding. Fans didn't sympathize, they recoiled. Eventually, Rick became easier to write off than redeem. Fan reaction: they turned Rick into someone we didn't care about anymore. Katie Logan, a rare case of early recast resistance. This one may surprise newer viewers. Today, Heather Tom's Katie Logan is beloved. But when Katie was recast in the early years, fans initially struggled to accept the change. The transition from the original portrayal to a more emotionally complex version of Katie took time. Early resistance was strong, with fans feeling the character's vulnerability had shifted too abruptly. Thankfully, this is one recast that eventually won viewers over, but it wasn't easy and it proves how fragile fan trust really is. Fan reaction at the time: she doesn't feel like the same Katie yet. Bridget Forrester, lost in the shuffle. Bridget Forrester suffered from inconsistency more than outright rejection. Multiple recasts made it difficult for fans to emotionally attach to her long-term. Each actress brought something different, but the lack of continuity made Bridget feel unstable. Sometimes sweet, sometimes stern, sometimes barely present. Instead of evolving naturally, Bridget kept resetting. Fans didn't hate the actresses, they hated the whiplash. Fan reaction: every time I reconnect, she disappears again. When recasts destroy emotional history, what hurts fans most isn't the new face, it's the loss of emotional memory. Soap operas thrive on shared history. Glances that mean something, arguments rooted in decades of pain, love stories built brick by brick. A bad recast doesn't just change an actor, it fractures that history. Suddenly, a legendary romance feels hollow. A rivalry loses its fire. A character's motivations stop making sense, and viewers feel betrayed. Why these recasts hurt so much? Because the bold and the beautiful isn't casual viewing. Fans have invested years, sometimes generations, into these characters. When a recast ignores that investment, it feels personal, like losing a friend and being told, this is the same person. Just accept it. But fans know better. The very sad truth. Recasts are sometimes necessary. Contracts end. Actors leave. Life happens. But when recasts are rushed, poorly written, or emotionally disconnected, they don't just fail. They scar the show's legacy. Some of these characters never recovered. Some storylines never healed. And some fans never forgave the change. Today's very sad news is this. Even icons can be ruined, not by betrayal or tragedy, but by a face that never should have replaced them. Final thought. For every successful recast, there's another that becomes a cautionary tale. The bold and the beautiful has given fans unforgettable moments, but it has also given them losses they still mourn, but fans know better. The very sad truth. Recasts are sometimes necessary. Contracts end. Actors leave. Life happens. But when recasts are rushed, poorly written, or emotionally disconnected, they don't just fail, they scar the show's legacy. Some of these characters never recovered. Some storylines never healed. And some fans never forgave the change. Today's very sad news is this. Even icons can be ruined, not by betrayal or tragedy, but by a face that never should have replaced them. Final thought. For every successful recast, there's another that becomes a cautionary tale. The bold and the beautiful has given fans